Whilst driving from Morelia to Ciudad Hidalgo in Mexico, back in the 80s we had two ways to get to Ciudad Hidalgo, which was the National Road or the Old National Road, which was called Mil Cumbres. Mil Cumbres basically means 1,000 curves. That stretch of road literally had 1,000 curves, so a lot of people would get motion sickness when on that road. One evening on our way back to my grandparents, who lived in Ciudad Hidalgo, my grandfather was driving, and he loved taking Mil Cumbres because it had really nice views, and he just really loved driving that road. But since we had the new National Road, not a lot of people used that road anymore, so it was kind of desolate with the exception of passing one or two little towns. It was dusk so soon that meant that being on such a desolate road in the mountains, we would be in complete darkness on the road with no many other cars on the same stretch of road. It took 2 hours to get to the town on that road, so maybe 45 minutes into the drive it had already gotten really dark, and as we were driving, my grandfather started slowing down. I was sitting in the back seat because my grandmother was in the front with my grandfather, so I kind of stood over the front chairs to see why he was slowing down. That's when I saw a hug tree log blocking the road. My grandfather came to a stop and immediately started going in reverse to turn around and get out of the immediately. After we turned, my grandfather stepped on the gas pedal, and I was sort of thrown back into the back seat. I immediately turned around to see if I could anything, and as we were speeding away, I could see men, very dimly since the light from the taillights from the car were starting to get dimmer and dimmer, coming from out of the adjacent trees next to tree log on the road, with flashlights and guns. We were about to get robbed, and thanks to my grandfather's quick thinking and taking action immediately, we avoided it. That was the last time I was ever on that road. It wasn't a spooky kind of creepy incident, but one time when I was 20, I was on a drive home and it was about an 8-hour trip. There ended up being a traffic mishap on the way, so I got held up but couldn't afford to book a hotel for the night. About 4 hours from home, like 11 p.m., I was on a stretch of secluded highway and there was a car behind me, but I didn't think anything of it. The same car followed me for the next hour, but I assumed that they were just going to the same place. I ended up stopping at a gas station to grab an energy drink, and the car stopped across the road but didn't get out. Again, I didn't think anything of it. When I left, the car pulled out and followed me again. I kept driving and about an hour later pulled over at a rest stop to use the bathroom. The car still behind me stopped at the entrance of the rest stop, but didn't get out. At this point, I got super creeped out. I was like 2 hours from the next city, home, so I didn't know what to do. Just to be sure I wasn't going bonkers, I pulled over at the next pullout. The car pulled over on a pullout behind it, but on the other side of the road. Again, they didn't get out, but just sat there. So I kept driving, and as soon as I got back into my town, I called my parents to tell them what was going on. They told me to go downtown and make 4 left turns. I did, and again, the car followed me. My parents told me to drive to the police station. The car followed me the entire way to the police station, and as soon as I turned in, they peeled off like 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. I went in and told the cops what happened, and they sent a patrol officer to find the guy, but I never heard anything about it. I have no clue what the person's motives were, but it terrified me. Now I'm super cautious anytime a car is behind me at night and takes the same turn I do. It was about 20 years ago, a chilly night with light snow falling gently from the sky. My husband and son were dozing off in the back seat as I drove us home along a quiet back road. The world seemed hushed, wrapped in a blanket of white, with only the soft hum of the engine breaking the silence. As we rounded a bend in the road, something unexpected unfolded before my eyes. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees, a silhouette against the pale glow of the snow. At first, I thought it was a child, perhaps out to play in the winter night, ready to toss a snowball our way. But as our eyes met, a chill seized me to the core. The child's face contorted into a twisted mask of rage, a stark contrast to the playful innocence I had anticipated. It happened in an instant, a fleeting moment etched into my memory like a haunting specter. I swerved past her, heart pounding in my chest, a sickening feeling gnawing at my insides. Glancing back in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see her lingering behind us, a lingering presence in the darkness. But there was nothing, only the empty expanse of the road stretching into the night. The encounter left me shaken, the memory lingering like a shadow in the recesses of my mind. I couldn't bring myself to speak of it, the fear and uncertainty weighing heavy upon me. It was as though I had glimpsed into a realm beyond comprehension, where the boundaries of reality blurred into the realm of the inexplicable. To this day, the image of that twisted face haunts me, a reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the darkness, waiting to be unveiled. And though I may never fully understand the truth behind that haunting encounter, one thing remains certain: the echoes of that night will forever linger in the depths of my soul. It was years ago, back when cell phones were around, but good service was still hit or miss. I was driving back from visiting my boyfriend at his college, a 3-hour journey through rural stretches of expressway. The night had fallen heavy and dark, the kind that swallows up the road ahead. Suddenly, the steering wheel began to shake violently, and I knew something was wrong. With a sense of relief, I spotted a rest stop exit just ahead. As I pulled off the expressway, I felt a twinge of unease. My friend, who was with me, was more than a little buzzed and not exactly helpful in this situation. I stepped out to inspect the damage, my heart sinking as I saw the low tire. Without hesitation, I popped open the trunk to retrieve the jack and spare tire. That's when 2 guys approached, offering their assistance. In the dead of night, at a remote rest stop, caution whispered in the back of my mind, but I figured I could use the help. As I fumbled with the tire, it became painfully obvious that these guys had no clue what they were doing. Meanwhile, my friend decided it was a great time to strike up a tipsy conversation with them, much to my dismay. I tried to shoo them away discreetly, but they lingered. Just when my nerves were about to reach their breaking point, a car emerged from the shadows of the parking lot. 2 more guys stepped out, and in that moment, the first 2 hurried back to their car and vanished into the night. The new arrivals wasted no time. They changed the tire swiftly and efficiently, not uttering a word the entire time. When they finished, I managed a grateful "thank you," to which they simply nodded before disappearing into the darkness. I couldn't shake the feeling of gratitude mixed with mystery. Who were those silent saviors? How long had they been watching from the shadows? Even now, more than 2 decades later, I find myself thinking of them, wishing them well wherever life may have taken them. Sometimes, in the midst of uncertainty, there are unexpected angels waiting in the darkness. As I drove along the deserted highway, the moonlight barely peeking through the thick canopy of trees, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, flanked by tall, looming trees that seemed to watch me with their gnarled branches. The only sound was the soft hum of my headlights cutting through the darkness. But the darkness seemed to creep closer with every passing mile, as if it was trying to envelop me in its suffocating embrace. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being followed, that someone or something was lurking in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to strike. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as my mind raced with thoughts of all the horror movies I had ever seen. The thought of being stranded on this desolate road, in the middle of nowhere, with no one around to help, sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, my headlights caught a figure standing by the side of the road. My heart skipped a beat as I slowed down, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a woman, her pale skin almost glowing in the dim light, her long, dark hair covering her face. She seemed to be huddled in a torn and tattered dress, her arms wrapped around her body as if trying to keep warm. I couldn't just leave her there, alone in the darkness. Despite the voice in my head telling me to keep driving, I pulled over and rolled down my window. "Do you need help?" I called out to her, but she didn't move or acknowledge my presence. Feeling a surge of bravery, I stepped out of my car and cautiously approached her. But as I got closer, I noticed something off about her. Her skin seemed to be covered in bruises, and her dress was torn in places, revealing cuts and scars. And then, as if on cue, she slowly lifted her head, and I saw her face, or what was left of it. The woman's eyes were sunken and hollow, her lips were cracked and bleeding, and her once beautiful face was now a mangled mess. I stumbled back in horror, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized I was dealing with something otherworldly. Before I could even react, the woman let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the night. I scrambled back to my car and slammed on the gas, not daring to look back. I could feel her presence behind me, her unearthly screams getting closer and closer. My mind was racing, trying to come up with a logical explanation for what I had just witnessed. But all I knew for sure was that I never wanted to drive on that desolate highway again. As I finally reached civilization, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see the woman's twisted figure in my rearview mirror. From that night on, I never drove alone at night, haunted by the memory of that night drive and the woman who had been waiting for me in the darkness.